welcome to another iteration of the Jungle Tier List. I know it's been like 3 months since the last one and several changes have occurred, but surprisingly, there haven't been many changes in this iteration despite the fact that, it's, again, been 3 months. The game has not had dramatic shift and the new Spirit of the Ancient Golem wasn't, that massive of an impact as people thought it would be. The only champions that really saw any huge changes were champions that had direct changes to their kits or champions that had very vital indirect changes happen, such as, item changes or something like that. Most of the champions were already quite fit in where they were placed, and the placements are responding well to the meta shifts that are occurring. The majority of the changes in the tier list were small, with only a few dramatic ones, like the ones you'd expect, such as Maokai and Rengar. Twitch was finally added, but he was, and still is, an overrated jungler. He's what you call a cheese champion, and that's not a joke with the fact that he's a rat. You either get to dominate your early games, succeed, and snowball out of control, or fail and become a liability until you somehow manage to farm up and recover. His ganks are really strong, although he's very prone to being instantly burned down during the gank. He's very weak to invasions and counter ganks, so God help you if somebody comes up and punches you in the ass. Skarner, his kit did not evolve enough to spare him of the whole fighter with utility conundrum. That means, he's got damage, he's got utility and tankiness, so Riot has to, bog him down with other deficiencies in order to make up for that. He has a lot of damage with some built-in tankiness, and the potential to lock down, targets kind of leads to Riot not wanting him to be very strong. But that allows him to snowball out of control if he gets fed. This results in Riot having to make his numbers a little bit fair by nerfing them all down, and, allowing him to kind of get to his power state if he gets levels. He was pretty damn strong once he received that stun, because, his stats are great. And Riot decided to, stop a few nerfs his way and tone him down, and he's sort of just kind of no longer seen as much, even though he's very strong in solo queue and can definitely carry and snowball out of control. Sejuani was raised a bit in the Magic bracket because, I haven't seen a lot of AP Sejuanis, probably because of that AP Sejuani mid player, and they've been doing a shitload of damage. This, of course, doesn't really help her in, clearing or anything, but it's kind of cool to see, AP Sejuani working as sort of, doomsday button kind of thing. Throw ultimate, go in, blow up entire enemy teams. So with anything, it kind of, made me realize she could be useful in that, but it's still Sejuani, and she still has all those other weaknesses. And at least, she was still in her same spots, but she was raised in the bruiser bracket as a result of a few people commentating in Reign of Gaming and on, Reddit, telling me why don't I consider AP junglers, bruisers. And, they raised a good point. In the magic damage tier list, I'm always like, these are when they're built strictly damage. But what about the AP champions that are able to, build some AP damage and then go, pure tanky? And I'm like, that's a good point. Those should probably be considered in the bruiser one, and I decided to add Maokai and at least into the bruiser bracket as well. And she's honestly, the best way to build her is building her as a bruiser, and everything else is just at least goodness and overpoweredness. Kale, she got nerfed a lot, and they hurt her jungle, but not completely. So her utility's still intact, and she still can, provide her W and her ultimate to change the game, even as a jungler. Pantheon is still a powerful early game jungler, and I know the nerfs did hurt him, and it only kind of slightly moved his position in the tier list, but still, come on, he can still dominate an early game and carry as a result. Lee Sin is no longer in the supportive bracket, but come on, the rest of him is still pretty much intact. He can still dominate the early game, even though he kind of takes more work than other champions. He can dominate the early game, snowball, and win the game. Not really, the changes didn't really make too much of a difference to him, though the W nerfs from across 3 months really did. Jarvan is my favorite champion, and I have to admit that I went overboard with denouncing him. The nerfs he received to his EQ a long time ago made him a lot more annoying to play, along with the fact that a lot of other junglers became the dominating stars, and people were playing him more. I kind of didn't want to say anything because people would just say I was screaming favoritism if I decided to, promote Jarvan. Still, though, he's made a resurgence because they nerfed those champions, and the people remembered, his EQ sure is annoying, but they left everything else intact. He still dominates people. He still can, EQ, execute someone with an ultimate and burst them down. Of course, they did nerf a lot of the tanky items he would normally buy, so his tank spec is kind of a lot weaker, but his bruiser and full-on quote-unquote assassin Jarvan still definitely works out. So he's definitely a strong pick right now, and he's making a resurgence, although not a massive resurgence like Maokai is making. Kha'Zix did not see any positional changes, but I do have to talk about him. He's still strong, albeit he feels a little bit unfocused with, what to actually build, and some of the changes they made to him are a lot more annoying than they need to be. They didn't reel some of them back in. But he can still focus on what he does best, assassinating, resetting, and going haywire, and he still's got everything else pretty fine for him. I do like the W, having a little bit more power, and he still can adapt to most of the gameplay. I mean, the game that's occurring right now that he's playing, he can adapt to it. So, hell, he's still strong. It's just he's being overshadowed by other characters and a little bit more fair than he used to be, right? Although I just said Kha'Zix was fine, Rengar has pretty much replaced him as a go-to jungle assassin. In a way, he's like, Rengar right now is kind of like Jungle Twisted Fate, though more accurately, he's like the new Pantheon. He is basically doing the same things Pantheon was doing a few patches ago, although Rengar has better jungle clearing just naturally, has more maneuverability thanks to his passive and the way his ultimate works, has stealth, which allows him to bypass wards and other bullcrap, has an easier time itemizing because he could just buy 5 Doran's Blades and just annihilate people, and his late game actually exists. Unlike Pantheon, Pantheon starts tapering off while Rengar can still insta-give a carry and be a natural dick to things, so yeah. He's basically the new Pantheon, although much better than the old Pantheon was before he was nerfed. Rengar's kind of really strong right now. I mean, I don't even have to tell you this right now. He's like one of the best picks to make in solo queue and one of the best competitive picks right now. Now, the one I have to talk about the most is Maokai. He is a champion that saw the most changes across the entire list. The changes he received were very dramatic, and some of the changes drained him of his power, yeah, like initiation, it's definitely worse, but they gave him more damage, more peeling power, and they made his ultimate far more reliable, and it became the single-handed most powerful supportive ability in the game. Maokai is the only jungler to exist in 4 brackets currently, and he's in the commanding position in all of them. He is one of the most broken champions in the game right now, although he's far better in the top lane than he is as a jungler. His ganking was nerfed, definitely, and the compensation of giving his sapperling a slow didn't make up for it. He can still lock down someone if he managed to catch them, but the range nerf was painful. This was compensated by giving him more damage to his W, and his ultimate becoming a sort of aura circle around him, which, will move alongside him as he walks around. With his ultimate now being able to travel with him, he can deal more damage reliably with it as well. Itemizing him as a jungler is more difficult on him than it is on top lane, even though building tanky is pretty easy. It's just you can't really go damage with him in the jungle as easily as you could in top lane because you have to spend gold on your jungle item or tanky stuff or whatever will help you clear and stuff like that. Admittedly, Maokai has always had great damage with his spammable Q before, but it will taper off dramatically as the game goes on. His W just couldn't keep up, and you didn't really know what to level. Do you level his E for slightly more damage or his W for slightly more, duration? It didn't have a clear-cut thing there, but now that his W's been boosted up in terms of damage and, effectiveness, it's kind of it makes a lot more sense to level up his W second to deal even more damage late game. So now he can become a threat against the soft, delicious carries later on into the game. Although against tanks, he still just kind of, can't really tickle them or anything. He just kind of slaps them around. Wet noodle fight, like they tend to say. But the biggest, most crucial change here, though it doesn't end up making him number 1 as a tank, it makes him, high in every other, bracket, and including tank, though, is his ultimate change. His ultimate becoming so reliable is by far one of the most powerful things Riot ever decided to do with any champion. Back then, his ultimate was really strong, but it was unreliable. Everybody would just, walk out of it or, avoid it altogether, or when you cast it, you couldn't charge it up fully because, oh crap, Kog'Maw is almost going to walk out of it. I have to use it now for the damage or something like that. It was just, unusable, unwieldy. It was mostly used for defense, rarely for offense. And, if the fight moved away from that, it was just completely pointless. You wasted time and mana, extreme amounts of mana. But now that it moves around with you, despite it having its range nerf, you can use it more effectively. You can sit in the middle of your team and reduce the damage they're receiving dramatically. Combine this with your incredible healing power, and no one will touch your carry. And if they do touch your carry, they won't deal any damage. Now, throw as much, auras as you can on Maokai. Give him, the Abyssal Scepter and deal more damage, or give him Frozen Heart and reduce the enemy damage dramatically. Give him Locket of the Iron Solari, and suddenly your team just won't receive any magic damage. It's ridiculous. Maokai is a defensive juggernaut right now. Hell, if your enemy team has a lot of Maokai and a lot of tanky champions, you're not going to kill them real quickly. In fact, they might just just, you know, bulldoze over you. It's pretty damn stupid right now. And pretty sure Riot's going to nerf it eventually. I mean, they already nerfed the duration so the enemy team could at least predict when it's going to go away. And at least, you know, you can't have it up forever. So there's that. Maokai is ridiculous right now. In the top lane, because he gets to do damage and be some kind of bruiser behemoth. And in the jungle, he gets to be an aura whore like he's always been. But now it's a lot more effective and a lot more dumb. So Maokai is going to get nerfed. We know that. He's kind of, well, he's definitely unbalanced. You know, the best I can say about, you know, this little fucking Yordle, Gnar, is that he's absolutely terrible in his Yordle form, but he's so goddamn broken as his Mega form. If you could control his transformation, he would be by far one of the most broken junglers in the game. Holy shit, the amount of CC this guy has. Of course, since you can't, you're stuck with that little useless Yordle form most of the time. He can't clear the jungle as a Yordle. I mean, he can barely do it, and then eventually you'll get items, and at that point, most anybody could clear the jungle, so it's kind of a moot point. But, and you know, when he becomes Mega Gnar, you see he melts the jungle. He goes into lane and sodomizes everybody. Holy crap, he's a god as Mega Gnar. And in team fights, it's absurd. I love Mega Gnar, just watching him wreck shit. But as a little useless Yordle, it's a pain to watch. I know some high-level players are like, Mega, you know, Jungle Gnar is great, and they play him and whatever. But you always see them suffer in the early game. They don't do anything in the early game. And then, you know, team fights happen and Mega Gnar form he gets going and he beats people to death and whatever. And they're like, oh my god, Mega Gnar is great. No, the only thing that goes to show is that he's really strong as Mega Gnar in team fights, regardless of where you take him. I've seen support Gnar work out because once he becomes Mega Gnar, he has 4 forms of CC and it's fucking stupid. So, yeah, Jungle Gnar is terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Mega Gnar, though, is fucking, god, I love that Mega Gnar. Like, I'll say he's a Yordle that I can actually tolerate that isn't a Moo Moo.